Hello, welcome back to the Matt Pfeiffer Experience. I am your host, Matthew Pfeiffer, and today we have on a very special guest. We have Danny Rosenberg. He is all the way from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and he is someone that I connected with over on Instagram. You know how we do things here. I like to bring people on that I would recommend myself, that I would send to a family or friend myself, or that I would hire myself if I were in their state. And so we are very appreciative of having Danny on today. And with that being said, let me introduce you to our guest, Danny. Welcome to the show. I'm going to kick it over to you. Let us tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started.
First of all, thank you for having me. I'm a litigating attorney, and I was kind of telling you this before we came on, but how I got started. I went to law school kind of late. I started off. I have a business degree, and my father was opening beach stores on the other coast of Florida, and at that time, I was finishing my studies and I was opening stores. So I was opening stores, and we opened a successful chain. And then at some point, I decided I want to go to law school. I think at age 26 or 27. So I got married. I moved over to the other side, Miami, and went to law school. And after my first year of law school, I decided I wanted to be a criminal defense attorney. That was my, because that's really kind of the real litigating, the stuff you see, the movie stuff you see on TV. So
You actually want to litigate. Some people can't stand
right.
it.
Well, that's my specialty,
Yeah.
so that's where I have the most fun.
Right.
So I walked in there and told the public defender's office, I went to the public defender's office because that's really where you can try as many cases as possible. Most people that want to learn trials will go to the public defender's office, the state attorney, or the district attorney, because those people are in court every day.
Yeah.
So I remember I walked in, I said, I want to volunteer. They looked at me like I was crazy because it's a really, really difficult job.
Yeah.
You walk in, you're getting 100 new files of people you've never seen, not as a volunteer, but when you become an attorney. Third year I became of law school, I became certified. So Supreme Court of Florida said that I was allowed to speak in the courtroom, but I had to have another attorney with me. So I started actually trying cases with a mentor or another attorney there. And then after I graduated the bar, they hired me at the public defender's office. And like I said, that was probably the most difficult job I've ever had because you have at least 200, 250 files, and then you would close 20 of them, and then you come back and 40 be waiting for you, and you had families calling and cousins. It was very, very intense. And so my goal was to try as many cases as I could. And at that point, I'd already been in business myself, so I really didn't want to work for someone for too long. So I tried, a bunch of cases, and then I went out on my own in private practice, which was a whole new learning experience because, like I was saying to you earlier, while it's practice of law, it's similar to every other business. You have to get business. If you don't have the case,
I think that's the part that a lot of people forget. With you in your world as an attorney, but also my world as a therapist. People think about working with clients, being in court. In my situation, working with clients and being, working through different modalities. People forget that there's a whole business aspect that you have to learn as well, and learn how to market yourself. Learn where my clients coming from. Learning about cash flow and accounting, and there's so many other aspects of it that people don't think about when it comes to an attorney or a therapist.
right? It's daunting. It takes a lot of the time up because you have to have. You could be a brilliant attorney if you don't have clients. It doesn't matter,
Yep.
So I got good at marketing myself and getting out there and joining new circles and doing what it was. And after a few years of being successful at what I was doing, I started to become known as like the in-court lawyer. So people, of any profession, because I was mingling in network groups that had, plumbers and roofers and all these different people, anything that had to do with court, they would send to me. So I started getting a lot of litigation cases that were kind of, civil or out of my wheelhouse. So about 7-8 years ago, I partnered up, maybe 8 years now, I partnered up, maybe 10 years, I have to think about that. But I partnered up with a young civil litigator that his specialty was civil. And we've built this litigation firm called Rosenberg Cummings. We have 6 lawyers working for us, 3 paralegals. We're a boutique firm that we're growing, and we have different divisions. We have a criminal defense division still because I still do that. I do federal cases. I do state cases. We have a real estate.
One of the things I don't mean to cut you off, but one of the things that I really like about the way that you built your firm is that you have so many different divisions I think that, and other attorneys, and I've said this before, just about when you're looking for an attorney, to find someone who specializes in whatever it is that you need, whether it's family law, criminal law. But in your situation, you have different divisions. It's a whole different setup than what a lot of other attorneys do, where there's a handful of attorneys who do everything, or one attorney who does multiple different things, which I typically discourage people to do. But you have different divisions where everyone's kind of focused, or that division is focused in on that vertical. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right. I mean, there's
Hmm.
certain people in the firm that don't touch certain kinds of cases,
Yeah,
that don't know anything about it, don't want to know anything about it, right?
yeah,
So we have that. My partner and I oversee it, so we know the gambit, but like I'm going to defer. Like I'll defer to him. Like
yeah,
if I tell the people ahead of time, even if they're calling, they're hiring me, I'm like, listen, my partner is the lead on the civil. You're going to be
yeah,
dealing with him on a daily basis. Yes, you can check in with me. I can be there. Sometimes I'm even litigating the case. But it's very important to do that because you can't be what they call it a one-stop shop in our industry where
yeah,
you just take I'm an anything that comes through the door lawyer. You don't want to be doing that because
yeah,
you have to be effective and you have to have just like any business. You got to be good or you're not going to
yeah.
get
That's when you start getting into Better Call Saul territory, I'm assuming.
business. Right.
Uh-huh.
That goes great. I get that a lot. People always you remind me
Yeah,
of him, remind me of this. I get all kinds of stuff. Lincoln
yeah,
lawyer, Lincoln lawyer a lot
yeah.
because
The
yeah.
now when it comes Florida is a very interesting state when it comes to family law, when it comes to petitions and custody. What type of dynamics do you see, like, pretty often, or what would you say is the most common dynamic that you see whenever you're litigating a case, a family law case in Florida?
I mean, obviously, with divorces, there's a whole gambit, but a lot that I see, especially with younger people, is that they're not aware of. Is when you have an individual that has a child when they're not married, when the people
Yeah.
aren't married. What I see a lot of times is, you know, they have no idea what rights when they split up these individuals have to the child, and
Hmm.
especially fathers think that they just have automatic 50-50 rights when you're not married. The father has no rights.
Yeah.
The mother has natural rights with the child. You have to establish paternity. It's called establishing paternity. It's called a paternity petition. You have to file with the court and say, "Hey, I'm the father, or so I'm the father. I want visitation. And you child support. All that stuff comes into play. But without that, the mother can just take the children and go to another state, and you won't see your
Hmm.
kids anymore. The mother can just lock the door, not let you in the house anymore, and you don't see the kids anymore. So I get that a lot. I get a lot of young couples that aren't married because trend is not to get married now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's where it's trending. So
Hmm.
it's just it's daunting. It's just astonishing how many people have no idea about that, and we have to tell them, and sometimes we have to rush it because they might have just gotten in a fight with their significant or their girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever it may be, partner, and they're worried they can just take. I tell them they can just take off with the kids. You might not see them again, so you have to rush to file because
Yeah.
if you file, then you can file orders to stop them from leaving the jurisdiction until this is decided. That kind of stuff,
Yeah.
and that's one. And with divorces, people just the misconceptions. People watch divorces in movies. They listen. They read tabloids. They watch YouTube, and they think they have an idea of how it works. Like I get calls all the time, like, "Oh, this is an easy case. She cheated. I have text. I tracked her car." I'm like,
Yeah.
"That's not a good thing. Okay,
Right.
you're tracking people. A, that's illegal. B, in most states, it's not even admissible." So it doesn't
Hmm.
matter if she cheated on her, he cheated on it. Doesn't that doesn't matter. It's like I was telling you, it's really a division. You've built this corporation together, and you have to divide the corporation. And the courts get annoyed when you try to drag them into some, Jerry Springer
Yes.
situation. They don't want to have any part of that.
You definitely left. You definitely mentioned a lot when it comes to that. I want to circle back to the conversation that you mentioned in terms of establishing paternity, and someone potentially being able to just take off with the kids. Uh, how often would you say, let's start there. How often would you say that someone does leave the state or even leave the country? I know that in Fort Lauderdale, where you're at, there's a lot of transplants, whether they are moving there from New York or, one of the northern states, or they are there from, another country, Cuba, Dominican, Colombia. It's a very diverse place. So I imagine that there's a lot of different areas that someone could take off to. Is it common that someone does just take off?
Very common. I see it so much.
Hmm.
And the problem is if they do leave, the tracking them down, because you have to serve these parties, meaning you have to have a process server hand to people for anything to start. So if you have no idea where they went, or you don't, even if they're in another state and you know where they are, it becomes problematic sometimes to serve them. If they leave the country, it's even more of a debacle. It could
Hmm.
take years to serve somebody. It really is a nightmare, and I see it. I see it a lot. I'm working on a few right now where we're rushing because we want to get something filed. That way, if they leave or they try to leave, we can have an order signed by a judge saying, no, 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 you got to stay within a certain mile range until we decide all this, So,
So
yeah, it happens
two
all.
two questions about that. Let's say that they have already left, and you are able to find them, but paternity has not been established. Does that mean that they don't have to come back, or does court just mandate them until paternity is figured out, or how does that work?
Well, action has to begin. So if I've filed the paternity petition, then they have to come back because
Hmm.
then there's in the court's eyes there's an allegation that this person's the father and he may have some rights.
Yeah.
So till we can decide this, you either need to come back or make yourself available to this court. Show the court that you'll make yourself available and be in
Hmm.
communication. Get a lawyer and have the lawyers communicate or whatever it needs to do for sure. But if you have nothing and then
Hmm.
find her, I have to file it, then I have to serve her.
Yeah.
It's a whole different.
What are some ways that paternity can be established? Is it as simple as making sure that someone's on the birth certificate? Is it that
Now,
simple, or?
there's another thing right there: the birth certificate. People think I'm on the birth certificate. That
Hmm.
doesn't mean that's evidentiary. That just means it goes to proof. It doesn't
Yes.
automatically establish. They do a if so if you are claiming to be the father, they can agree. Most times, people agree. That does happen more times than not.
Hmm.
Um, but they can say no, he's not, and then they have to do a test. They have to
Hmm.
literally do a test to see if you are the father. That's the first part.
Hmm.
So there's multiple parts to paternity petition. One, really establishing that you're the father. Most people agree to that part, so we move right to part two. Part two, the toughest, is the visitation schedule, right?
Hmm.
It's not automatic 50-50. It is, but let me go. That's part two. Part three is child support.
Hmm.
Child support, how much what person pays, who's supposed to pay who, and that goes back to the visitation. So the way it works is whoever has it goes overnights and income.
Yeah.
So whatever parent has more overnights, it's that's going to dictate more likely. It's like a balancing scale. So say she makes more money than him, but she has the kids 5 nights a week,
Hmm.
he'll probably pay her child support.
Yeah.
Some people, a
Hmm.
lot of people call me and say, "Well, she makes a lot more than me." Okay, but do you have the kids at all? Well, no. I'm like,
Right.
well, why would she pay you child support? You know what I
Right.
mean? That's just the way it works. So that's another misconception.
Now, let's say I think one of the pushbacks that you hear quite often, I know that I've heard a lot of this pushback, is that someone takes off because it's not safe, or because there's abuse allegations. Does that change the dynamic at all?
Absolutely. I mean, look, the standard, and in family law, the joke is the standard is what's in the best interest of the child.
Hmm.
The courts will fall back on that no matter what you present to them because they want to create a safe environment for the child.
Yeah.
So what you see is no matter how, whatever behavior they happen, if there's a claim that there's a drug addict, there's physical abuse, or there's mental abuse or emotional abuse, they're going to fall back on emotional, the best interest of the child, best interest of the child.
Yeah.
And it's hard to combat. You can combat that, but you have to really
Yeah.
attack the credibility of the person or, really pick apart the
Yeah.
allegations.
I'm sure you get this a
Which,
lot,
which
where,
blends into the criminal defense work that I do.
yeah, I'm sure you get this a lot where I'm sure that there's some men who are listening to this, and they're saying that the typical women have all the rights. Women, it's biased towards women. What do you say to that? What have you said to clients who may have experienced that and where they might feel like they're kind of getting the shit end of the deal because she's taken off and now he has to prove paternity. He also has to prove, he also has to try to get her back and jump through all these hoops just to be able to see their child.
What I will say is that it is biased towards women, and
Hmm.
it's not because it's not. It's because in the eyes of the law, the mother has natural rights. It's a little easier to establish paternity with a mother,
Yeah,
Um, but at the same time, if you can establish look, and judges are human beings, right?
yeah.
So very hard for judges to take children away from their mother. It's a lot
Hmm.
easier for them to take children away from the father than it is the mother. For I don't know if you can say obvious reasons, but there's a connection with a mother and a child. Um, so it's a lot easier for them to do. Now, the courts do try not to do that. They
Yeah,
do. The courts want both parents in a child's life because the science and the statistics on that, the difference of how a child turns out with both parents and and the struggles they have when it's single parents, is no question. So they do trend to that, but it is a little bit biased. Um, but I found that a lot of people that are, some people that are saying that, there's more to the story than what they're telling you. That's
yeah.
the number one lesson I'll tell you when you're hearing a story is there's usually more details you're not getting.
What would you say is the most common story or detail when it comes to situations like that?
I mean, what I see, which is a lot, was very nasty, is there's some fathers that really just don't want to be in the child's lives, but are now trying to get overnight so they don't have to pay more child support.
Hmm.
I see all kinds of things like that. I see, you know, if people have substance abuse problems, they tend to be in denial about it.
Yeah,
If they don't realize what emotional abuse, what a child takes in too.
yeah,
If parents are like beating each other up, in their eyes, they justify, oh, well, she hit me, I hit her. It's ridiculous.
yeah.
But the children are super traumatized. So a lot of people don't have they really don't understand, the effects
Yeah.
that what the best interest of the child is. They
And a
just
lot of times I'm assuming that they're so focused on the other person and getting revenge and getting payback that sometimes that kind of goes out the window on the effects that it has on the child.
when that happens, it's not fun, and
Yeah.
that's why when I told you it's my least favorite kind of law to
Hmm.
practice because that
Yeah.
happens and it's hard. Like I try to tell the clients, like, listen, you have to treat this as a business decision,
Yeah.
not an
Hmm.
emotional decision, and not just financial.
Yeah.
Meaning, what's the best for the children? How do we divide the assets? What's the shortest route to get to the best solution? Right?
Yeah.
Not I want to prove that she's a blah 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 or he's a, that's never going to
Yeah.
happen because
Right.
in all my years I've never heard a court adjudicate her this and him that. They don't get
Right.
into what kind of person the person is.
Right.
So it's a challenge. It's a tough field to practice in. And the lawyers that are doing the work right and the
Hmm.
judges are doing the work right have a bad rap because there's so many lawyers and judges that are doing it wrong.
Yeah.
So that's also tough to deal with.
One of the things I like to get ahead of is how do people prevent situations like this? Is it as simple as getting married before having children? Is it as simple as doing a paternity test as soon as a child is born? What are some proactive ways that people can prevent situations from
Right.
getting this far?
Well, I would always advise not to be married just because you have kids. So you
Hmm.
get married because you want to get married and you thought it out, right?
Yeah.
But yes, if the way to prevent this is if you are having children, you want to talk to the others, to your spouse or not your spouse, to your partner, and say, look, I spoke to a lawyer about this, not to start anything between us. I'm not upset or anything, but we
Hmm.
have to do this for this can be this, and you have to really have that tough talk and make sure that that's done.
Yeah.
And as far as divorce goes, I mean, as far as getting married, marriage is something that people do on the drop of a dime. It's
Yeah.
emotional, it's hard, but it's hard to give advice on people with that. But this, to try to be as knowledgeable as you can about it while you're married.
Now, the flip side of that, I want to talk about the ladies' side of this. For a lot of them, I'm assuming that I know I've heard this story that Yes, they took off. They moved to another state. They moved back to their home country, whatever the case is, to find more support. They weren't getting the support that they needed from their ex. They weren't a part of the child's life. They weren't participating whatsoever. So then they left, and now this is a way for their ex to be able to try to either win them over or try to dictate control over their life. They had no interest before, but then once they found out that they left, then now all of a sudden they're highly interested and filing all these petitions. Um, do you see that often? Is that something that happens often, or and what are some ways that people can combat that?
I do see that, um, and and there are a lot of cases like that. Like I was
Mhm.
telling you, like a father that has nothing to do with the kids,
Yeah,
all of a sudden gets upset about something, and now is trying to literally maximize anything they can to make life harder on the kids and the mother. The kids don't even want to have any part of the father. They've seen something or something's been done to them. And the best way to combat that is always the best interest of the child. We fall
hmm
back on that. Best interest of the child. So I can make an argument in any situation if I feel like it's in the best interest of the child. So if I
yeah,
present to the court and say, look, this father's had nothing to do with these kids. He abandoned these kids. She had no support. She literally raised these kids by herself. She worked every day. She had babysitters she had to pay. And now this guy comes in and he has the nerve to sit here and do this
yeah,
when the kids, he's been abandoned. So, like, if I can show that, he might get, if he's not a drug addict or an abuser, because if that's on the table, we're going
yeah.
to shut that down. But if he's not, maybe they start to do, the court sometimes will go into reunification plans, but with therapists involved and monitoring. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I see it. I see it. I see it all.
hmm And you mentioned earlier that about misconceptions that people have when it comes to divorce because of what they read in tabloids, what they read, what they see on Google. I'm assuming that's everyone's best friend, and these days I'm assuming it's also Chat GPT and AI, and there's a lot of misinformation. It's not even sometimes not even misinformation. It's just not relevant to their situation because it's a different state, different county, circumstances are different, or they're hearing it from someone who they're married longer, or their dynamics are different. Um, what would you say is the most common misconception when it comes to divorce and when it comes to family law?
I think the understanding of what marital property is the
Hmm
biggest thing that I run into, because sometimes I'll get people say, "Oh, look, yeah, she has a credit card, but my name is not on it,"
hmm
or "I have the house is under my name," and that's not what the courts look at. It doesn't matter whose
Yeah.
name it's under, right? It's, was this property acquired during the course of the marriage? That's marital property. So
Mhm.
if you purchase a home, if and it's not just what you own, it's what you owe. That's another
Yeah.
thing people forget. Like, well, I say, well, Danny, he ran the card for $100,000. I had no clue. Okay, well, you're on the hook for $50,000. Like,
Yeah.
people don't understand that, So, um, and also, people that start their own businesses, like, right? You're like, well, it's my business. She has nothing to do with it. Well, the money that you make from that business, she has a half interest in it. Now, she
hmm
can't go, in the movies, they'll show, the wife gets the business and she takes over. And that doesn't happen unless the person agrees to it, because usually there's partners involved. Like, if you have, like, my legal partner has, he doesn't have to work with my wife if I get divorced. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, whatever
hmm
interest that I would have brought in, she would have gotten 50%. So people just don't really understand what marital property is. Um, and they think that they're protected in certain ways. And it's, not easy to tell them the bad news.
hmm Or I'm assuming because they think that certain things were bought with their money,
Right. Yeah.
that because they are the breadwinner or because it came from a certain bank account, not realizing that it's more so has to do with time, the fact that you guys are together during that time.
It has everything to do with time.
Hmm
Exactly. And I mean, there's
Yeah.
certain exceptions. There's certain exceptions, like, certain inherited the trust, trust and stuff like that. But it's everything to do with time. Was it
hmm
during here and here? I have a lot of people that, I've lived in this house for 30 years. I improved his house. I moved in. Okay, but the house isn't marital.
hmm
Well, what do you mean? I'm like, he purchased it, he owned it when you came, so it's not
Yeah.
marital. Now, the improvements to the house, you could make an argument that, you're entitled to 50% or whatever, that kind of stuff. But, courts, the courts in family law are so backed up. They're
Hmm.
so tired, the judges. They're
Yeah.
like traumatized. They just sit there all day and hear like the worst things about kids. They will fall back on whatever law they can find. So
Yeah.
if they can shut this argument down, nope, not your name, goodbye. They
Yeah.
don't really want to get into all this. That's why you bring in this like cheating on me and it's not going to help. Some states
Yeah.
allow it. I
Yeah.
don't want to practice family law in those states. I'll tell you that.
So it sounds like to prevent all this or to overall protect yourself, are you a fan of prenups?
Prenups are great. It's the easiest because the
Hmm.
prenup is literally like you're laying out how you're going to divide the assets. It's a
Yeah.
contract. It's contract law. That's what family law is. It's
Right.
contract, right? There's
Hmm.
a contract. The court looks at it. Okay, you agreed to this. You signed this. It wasn't under duress. This is how we're going to divide the assets.
Yeah.
That being said, that is not an easy talk to have with someone that you're getting
Right.
married. If you can
Yeah.
have a level-headed talk, yes, it's the best way. I always make fun of my partner because he's always like, yeah, prenups, they need to do prenup. I'm like, listen, you're missing the whole part of the hard part of the prenup is delivering this on like a new love. They're going to say you're not trusting them, but you have to know how to deliver that.
Yeah.
But if you can do that, and I've seen a lot of reasonable parties and another thing
Yeah.
with a prenup is that I can't, like, if you are getting married, for example, and you say, hey, can you write a prenup for me?
Hmm.
If I give you that prenup, I have to advise you that she needs to go take that prenup and consult her own lawyer, have
Yeah.
them make modifications, because the number one way to attack a prenup is that it was coerced, it
Yeah.
was duress. I didn't have a lawyer, I didn't have this, and that's the first attack to any prenup. And I've done big celebrity cases with airtight prenups that get attacked. I was on drugs when I signed this, or whatever it may be. So it's always so again, it can be a little bit more complicated because then she's going to go or he's going to go and take it to their lawyer, and the lawyer, depending on the personality of the lawyer, some of these lawyers just want to fight. They might start something, so it's not so easy.
Yeah.
But yes, if you can get one hashed out, that's the best.
Yeah. It's not a sign, seal, deliver situation, but it sounds like it definitely helps,
Right.
especially if the person agrees to it.
Yeah. The best is to go to therapy and fix your marriage. That's
Yeah.
what I advise people. If you
Yeah.
can fix your marriage, you're better.
Hmm.
It's much
Yeah.
better. If you're
Absolutely.
truly unhappy, I understand. But I hear a lot of the same things when they come,
Yeah.
and I'm in couple therapy for 20 years with my wife.
Yeah.
We
Hmm.
have a good marriage, but because we go to couple therapy for
Yeah, I think
20
that's a part that people don't like having that conversation about relationships. Two things that you actually brought up. One, that there's a lot of things about a marriage that is really actually a business decision, and you're building this corporation. People don't like hearing that because it takes away all the lovey-dovey,
right,
the warm and fuzzy of a relationship. But it's the reality. And then the other part is that it takes a lot of work to maintain a relationship. People just sometimes think that you can just get married and just set it and forget it when it takes a lot of maintenance to be able to make it work.
right. Well, as far as the corporation part, that's more when you're getting divorced. At that
Yeah,
point, that's what I want you to look like because I don't want you to focus. That lovey-dovey at this point has turned into
yeah,
something real ugly, and I don't want you to
yeah,
focus
absolutely,
on the business side of it. But yeah,
absolutely.
marriage is, and I'm telling you, as a person that's in couple therapy I believe very heavily in therapy. I
Yeah,
really do. There's a
mhm,
stigma that therapy is for crazy people. I can't stand to hear that. Like,
yeah,
I think that people are walking lunatics. Everybody
yeah,
has their own trauma and their own things. They don't even know what makes them, how they're wired, right?
yeah,
So imagine you're putting two people together now, and there's the love phase at the beginning, the honeymoon phase, but then people are different, and if you don't learn how to communicate, how to be patient, how to be empathetic, how to even if you're right, shut your mouth and just listen to the other person. Like, if you can master that, you're not gonna get divorced,
yeah,
right? And
hmm,
that's the best. But a lot of people aren't willing to put that work in because that
yeah,
work entails you looking at yourself.
absolutely.
And a
Yeah,
lot of
that
people,
can be difficult.
you can't. They don't want to peel that onion, right? And
Yeah, absolutely.
that's what I
Danny,
find.
this has been absolutely amazing. Tell people if they are interested to work with you, work with your practice, regardless of what division it is. Where's the best place for people to find you at? Where can people find your social media handles and those sorts of things?
Well, rosenbergcummings.com is our website. That's for the litigation firm,
Hmm.
and I have the criminal side of the firm is marketed under Daniel Rosenberg, PA. and that's Rosenberg Law Firm, at Rosenberg Law Firm on Instagram if you want to go. And that you're going to get you'll get a lot of the criminal snippets, and those are entertaining videos where I'm talking about certain scenarios and all that. But there's a link to the litigation firm if somebody's interested in different fields or has questions. We're on the phone all day answering questions, so they're welcome to call. We're welcome to speak to anybody and let you know if we can help you. If we can't help you, believe me, we'll tell you that too.
And no matter where you are watching or listening to this at, you can go down into the notes, into the show notes if you're listening to this on Spotify or on Apple, and all of his information will be there about his firm. All of the details about his social media handles will be there as well. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can go down into the details and find his information there as well. And be sure to go over to his social media handles. Make sure that you share with him something that you learned from today. Give him some follows. Make sure you share this with friends and family members that might be out in Fort Lauderdale in Florida that might need the help of an attorney with their divorce, with their breakup, with their custody situation. Also, make sure you guys comment down below something that maybe you learned today that maybe you didn't know before. Let us know something that maybe you're going to utilize in your divorce as well. With all that being said, thank you so much. This is Matt Pfeiffer Experience. I am your host, Matthew Pfeiffer. With all that being said, I'll see you in the next episode. You guys have a good one. Perfect. You did great. What'd you think?
It was great. It was
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, you're a natural on podcasts. You hop on podcasts a lot?
I do podcasts. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I do.
Yeah.
They're fun. I think they're fun. I like having
Yeah.
conversations with cool people. So to me,
I agree.
you're a cool dude. I'm glad we met.
Thank you. Yeah, likewise. Yeah, definitely stay in touch. If you need anything on social media, branding, marketing, anything like that, definitely don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah,
And we can go from there.
I appreciate it, brother. And
All
talk
right.
soon. If you need me for anything, let me know. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Matt. Pleasure to
Yeah.
meet you.
You
Take
too.
care.